So it officially happened. Republicans passed their tax bill. I want to go ahead and give you a full breakdown of it here in as simple and straightforward terms as possible, so you get a sense of the details of it. So first of all, it passed the House 224 to 201. It got 0 Democratic votes, and 12 Republicans actually voted no on it. Now, for those of you who are a little bit baffled by that, don't be. Because what happens is typically Republicans from otherwise Democratic districts in Democratic states, sometimes they get elected. And when they're elected, they know, like, oh, I should probably not 100% vote party line with Republicans because then I'm going to get my ass voted out. So that explains, at least partly explains, why you have 12 Republicans who voted against it. Now, in the Senate, it passed 51 to 48, straight down party lines. Not a single Democrat voted for it, thank goodness. And every Republican voted for it. Obviously, John McCain isn't there. He went back home to Arizona. He's getting treatment for cancer, and the reports are he ain't doing too well, and he's on borrowed time at the moment. So he went home to Arizona, and every other Republican voted for it, including Susan Collins, who's supposed to be the moderate one. She feigned concern about certain parts of the bill, but then she's like, yeah, anyway, I'm going to vote for it. And by the way, she also brushed off criticism of the vote as sexist. She's, there's a lot of sexist covers this. What? So you're doing the McFeminism trick, just like Hillary. You hide behind your gender to try to deflect from serious policy criticisms against you. That's what Susan Collins is doing. Like, oh, come on, you can't criticize my vote. Don't be sexist. Well, there are clearly reasons to criticize the vote that have nothing to do with gender. And in fact, all I've seen is substantive criticisms of Susan Collins' vote. So, let me first give you the parts of the bill that are either benign or you could argue they're actually a good thing. So the standard deduction is going to be raised to $24,000 for couples and $12,000 for individuals, which is a near doubling from the current levels. So these are provisions that could help regular people, and certainly up front they could help regular people. The child tax credit will grow from $1,000 to $2,000. Only the first $1,400 will be refundable, and access for poor families, they say, is not significantly expanded. So in other words, they're expanding the child tax credit, but not by much. So that's all I got in terms of ones that you could look at, provisions you could look at and say, okay, not terrible. But they're Republicans, so clearly they have tricks up their sleeve. And you're about to know the gigantic downside of this bill. So first of all, the popularity of it. What are we looking at? I mean, this just passed, so in a democracy, it obviously has about 51%, right? I mean, you wouldn't want a political party pushing policies that's fundamentally opposed to what the American people want, right? The approval rating is 33%. Only 33% of Americans favor this bill. That is very, very unpopular. And people have brought up this criticism to Paul Ryan. He just brushes it aside. He's just like, misinformation, something. The media, fake news media is spreading fake news, and that's why people don't like it. So we're just going to brush off the fact that we're passing a piece of legislation that's overwhelmingly unpopular. In a democracy, in what's supposed to be a constitutional republic and a representative democracy, shouldn't that be like one of the most important things you weigh in determining whether or not to pass a piece of legislation? Like, in a world that made sense, that would be the case, right? You have politicians who get together and they go, okay, let's pass this legislation. Shit, we just got a poll in that says only 33% of people support it. I guess we got to redo the legislation until it's something that people, at least 51% of people like. Nope, didn't do it. So then we move to another gigantic portion of the bill that I don't think has been talked about enough. In all of my readings that broke down the bill, prior to its passage, I didn't see almost any discussion of this. The individual mandate in Obamacare is repealed, which basically gets rid of the glue that holds together Obamacare. Because when you don't have the individual mandate, you don't have enough people in Obamacare, you don't have enough funding to, pay for people when they need care. So the individual mandate, even though, to be fair, it's the one provision of Obamacare that when you break it down piece by piece, that the American people say, nah, we're not really sure we're in favor of that one. If you get rid of that, the rest of it basically falls apart. But that's why they did it. And according to, I think it's the Congressional Budget Office, or according to independent analyses of this provision, it's going to result in, number one, higher premiums for people. Number two, 13 million uninsured people. So they just, in the blink of an eye, they just go, yeah, let's kick 13 million people off of their health insurance. Not good, not good. And then also, again, up front, this bill cuts almost everybody's taxes. You're about to see in the long run that's not the case at all. But even whatever amount you might save in taxes up front, that might be more than made up for in the fact that your premiums are going to increase for your health insurance. And it depends which analysis you read, but it's about 20%. There's going to be about a 20% increase, which offsets some of the upfront cuts. Okay. What else do we have? Well, this bill eliminates the alternative minimum tax, which is a $250 billion cut for the rich. So for those of you who don't know, the alternative minimum tax is basically this. Rich people have and corporations, they have a team of lawyers to try to figure out how to weasel out of paying their taxes. And they use them. So the alternative minimum tax makes it so that, let's say a rich person finds a way to get their tax rate all the way down to 14%, let's say, on income. They somehow made it so that they could chip away and get their income tax down to 14%. Well, the alternative minimum tax says, no, you're going to have to pay at least 25%. So again, rich individual, the marginal tax rate would be 39%. They get a team of lawyers to chip that all the way down to 14% by using all the loopholes. But the alternative minimum tax goes, no, you can only deduct up to 25%. You're still going to have to pay at least 25% on your income. Well, they got rid of that. They got rid of the alternative minimum tax. So now, if you get a team of lawyers to get your tax rate down to 14%, so be it. You pay 14%, which again, $250 billion cut for the rich. And this has to be made up for somewhere. And where are they going to shift the burden? It ain't to other rich people, it's to you. They'll shift the burden onto you, and then on top of that, they just add to the deficit. Again, we'll get to that in a little bit. Then you have a massive corporate tax cut. This is really the crux of the bill. This is where most of the cuts go. So the top rate goes from 35% to 21%. And it saves corporations $1.3 trillion over 10 years. $1.3 trillion. Now, I'm sure you could already tell, that's a ridiculous thing because corporate profits are at record highs right now. They're not struggling. They're nowhere near struggling. It's the opposite. They're thriving. And they get a cut, the corporate tax rate, from 35% to 21%. But when you get into the history of it, it's even worse. So in 1952, the corporate tax rate accounted for 33% of all federal tax revenue. Today, the corporate tax rate or corporate taxes bring in less than 9% of federal revenue. So again, that tax burden is going to shift somewhere. Corporations used to pay 33% of federal taxes. Now they pay less than 9%, and the Republicans just made it so they're going to pay even less than that. So now corporations are not bringing in a significant chunk of the federal tax revenue. They're going to shift the burden onto you, which leads to the next fact here. All households earning less than $75,000 a year which, by the way, is the overwhelming majority of the American people, they're going to see higher taxes by 2027. So over a decade, the people, middle class and poor people, less than 75,000, working people, they will see a tax increase. An increase. Now, it's funny because you see, honestly, chumps who've fallen for the Republican tax scam who have tweeted at me where they're like, hey, liar, you're a liar about the tax rate going. No, I'm not lying. Every independent analysis says that when you extrapolate a decade out, the taxes on people making $75,000 a year or less, it goes up. But then they say, wait, but up front it gets cut. But isn't it curious how all the tax cuts for the rich and for corporations, permanent. All of them, permanent. But just so happens for the middle class and the poor, not permanent. There's a sunset provision on it. So when they say, oh, we'll come back, that's the thing, we're going to come back and make it permanent for the middle class. Well, then why didn't you already do it? You have the numbers. You have the overwhelming numbers in the House. You have the majority in the Senate. You guys say, hey, we're all about cutting taxes for middle class and poor people. So why didn't you do it? So why didn't you make those, every middle class tax cut and every poor tax cut permanent? Why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do it? Ted Cruz likes to go around and say, all I care about is cutting tax for the middle class and the poor. I don't care about cutting tax for the rich. Okay, so why didn't you make the rich tax cuts the one with the sunset provision and all the taxes for the middle class and the poor, the ones that are permanent? They did the opposite. Why? Because they're fucking liars. And they're just serving their corporate donors. They're serving the rich. They're serving the corporate donors. There's no question about it. It's not a hard one to deduce. It's crystal clear. Every cut for you, sorry it runs out sometime, but maybe at some point, hypothetically, in the future, we'll fix that. But for the rich, we made it permanent now. But God, they're such liars. Okay, furthermore, there's a 2% cut in the top marginal tax bracket. Right now, it's about 39%. That's going to drop to 37%. So it's even a cut for not just corporate profits, but for personal income. They take the top rate from 39% to 37%. But even that's not even the total picture, because there's what's called a pass-through tax cut to 30%. So what that means is individuals can register, almost like it's an individual who's his or her own corporation. And what they can do is register as an LLC themselves, and then the tax that they would pay if they do that is 30%. So really, for a large number of people that are supposed to be in that top marginal tax bracket, their cut is going from 39% to 30%. So that's even significantly lower than the Bush tax rates. The Bush tax rates, 35% was the top rate under Bush. By the way, blew a giant hole in the deficit because of the rich tax cuts and, of course, the two wars that he put on the national credit card. But so think about that. They say, oh, look, we're only doing a small cut from 39% to 37%. But then they turn around and say, but we're going to do a pass-through tax cut where if a individual rich person registers as an LLC, they get to pay 30%. Not 39%, not 37%, but 30% more. The estate taxes exemption is doubled from $5.5 million to $11 million. So what that means is that an even smaller share of the ultra-rich are going to pay the estate tax. And even those who do pay it will pay substantially less than under the current law. So the estate tax already applies to, I think it's 0.02% of the American people, because you have to have a net worth of $5.5 million or more. But now they're saying, no, we're going to make that $11 million. Because, people who had $7 million were so oppressed by the estate tax. And by the way, this is one of those issues where the Republicans do their bullshit framing and their marketing, where they say, no, it's not the estate tax, it's the death tax. And they get regular people, fucking farmers in like Arkansas or some shit, to go, oh shit, I die, I want to pass my money to my kids. I'm against the death tax. But no, it only applies. The reason it's the actual name is the estate tax is that it only applies to people with fucking estates. So again, it took it from 5.5 million in net worth for it to apply to you. It's kicked all the way up to 11 million. So now I don't even know, what is it, 0.01% of society that it's going to apply to. These guys, they are just 100% the corporatist party, the ultra-rich party. They just, it's to a comical extent. All right, more. The Tax Policy Center finds that the top 1% of taxpayers are earning 82.8% of the benefits from the cuts by 2027. So when you extrapolate out for a decade, in totality, 82.8% of the benefits are going to the top 1%. Nobody can tell you this is not a tax bill that's totally geared towards doing the bidding of the rich and corporations. Nobody can tell you that. That fact right there is pretty much all you need to know. And then, of course, the final fact, which exposes the unbelievable hypocrisy of the Republicans, is that this bill is going to add $1.4 trillion to the deficit. Now, notice something. The Republicans always used to shriek about the deficit nonstop. In fact, part of the Tea Party wave was that they were saying, oh, the deficit, the fucking deficit, we got to fix it. Oh my God, look at this crazy Democratic president, the deficit's going up. So they use that as like one of their main defining issues, as like, we're the party of fiscal responsibility. They say they are when they're campaigning. We got to get this deficit down. You know, we don't want to leave a burden on our grandchildren. What's wrong with us? What kind of monsters are we? But now, every Republican, except for the 12 in the House, but the overwhelming majority of Republicans in the House and every Republican in the Senate just said, yes, I will vote to increase the deficit by $1.4 trillion. What happened, guys? I don't know what happened. See, it's a trick. It's a trick. They will scream about the deficit only when they're trying to make a case against programs that help you. So if you're talking about healthcare, if you're talking about education, they'll go, oh, are you kidding me? And this is their next trick, is they're going to come back. Their next legislative move is they'll come back and go, now we got to tackle the deficit, so let's cut Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. You just added $1.4 trillion to the deficit. You just did it. You just chose to do it. And now you're going to turn around and say, we have to cut it for, middle class and poor people. We have to do cuts. Why? Because they don't care about the deficit. They never cared about the deficit. It's a trick. It's a ploy. It's a scam to try to stop the government from doing what the people want it to do, from helping regular people, working people. But whenever it's to do endless war, and whenever it's to serve their corporate donors and the rich, then they don't care about deficits at all. Like, yeah, well, I don't give a fuck. Loot the treasury, raid it. I don't give a shit. I don't care. You paid my campaign contributions, so I'm going to do your bidding. And what's been really fascinating is seeing how, like, there's a few writers who apparently had totally drunk the Kool-Aid of the Republicans, who are right-leaning writers, and they wrote these panicked articles like, I don't understand why the Republicans vote for this. It adds $1.4 trillion to the deficit. This is crazy. It's like, yeah, you fucking naive fool. You didn't realize this? That they've been playing you all along, every goddamn step of the way? And the Republicans across the board are calling for more war, save Rand Paul. Not a single one of them said, hey, maybe bombing Syria is unaffordable. Nobody said that. Nobody said that, because honestly, it's more about what are your values. They value serving the rich. They value serving corporations. They value endless war. So then the deficits don't fucking come into their mind at all. It's only when it's for you. We can't afford fucking Medicare for all. Are you kidding me? It's so expensive. I don't want to give fucking kids. Right now, the Democrats were like, put CHIP, Children's Health Insurance Program funding, which gives healthcare to 9 million kids. Put that in this tax bill. They're like, no, we're not going to do. What? And then they'll turn around and say, we don't have the money. You're adding $1.4 trillion to the deficit to serve the rich. And you're going to say we don't have the money? Well, then you don't have the money for the tax cuts for the rich. Oh, no, we have the money for that, even though we don't. They're so shameless. They're completely and utterly shameless. This bill is abysmal, and I just want everybody to know. This is important. So, log this in the old memory bank. Give this a like on YouTube, or if you're watching it through a link on Twitter, favorite it on Twitter, like it on Twitter, so you can come back and check this out when it happens. Hear me now, quote me later. There's going to be another giant economic crash. And that, by the way, is everybody's fault. But the Republicans are putting that crash into overdrive. They're going to make that crash come much, much sooner. Because history shows every time you cut taxes for the rich, you cut taxes for corporations, and you deregulate, you have what's called a boom-bust cycle. So everything takes off. We go, oh my God, the good times are never going to end. This is amazing. And then boom, everything implodes. That's why there was the Roaring 20s. Why do they call it the Roaring 20s? Oh my God, the market. Oh, it's just so great. Fucking corporate profits everywhere and things are going fucking wonderful. And then, oh my God, the Great Depression. So it happened when we did in the 19-teens and 1920s. Same thing. Deregulation, cut taxes for the rich. Boom. The Great Depression. It happened after Reagan. Reagan came in there, same thing. Cut taxes for the rich, deregulate. Oh my God, Reagan's a wizard with the economy. This is wonderful. Second he gets out of office, boom, the bubble bursts, giant recession. And then it happened under George W. Bush. Now, to be fair, Clinton helped with the shittiness because he got rid of Glass-Steagall. He got rid of Glass-Steagall with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. So now you could have casino capitalist bets, commercial banks doing crazy casino capitalist bets with your money. So deregulate, cut taxes for the rich, Great Recession, subprime mortgage crisis, Great Recession. And now we're doing it again. We're doing it again. Republicans act like we didn't just have the giant crash. Now, Obama came in, he did Dodd-Frank, which was an attempt to regulate more, but Dodd-Frank was massively weak. I always shit on Dodd-Frank, but the reason I did that is not because, oh my God, it's way too strong and this is central control in Washington. No, it's because it was too weak that I was shitting on it. Not because it was too strong, but everybody in Washington, the Republicans would say, oh, we hate Dodd-Frank. Why? Not because it was too weak, because they said it was too strong. They wanted no rules. Now we're back to no rules. Now we're back to cutting taxes for the rich and deregulating. So there's going to be another giant crash, and then everybody's going to turn around on TV and go, what? Who could have seen this coming? Fucking everybody could have seen it coming. I'm telling you right now, in advance, there's going to be another crash. Because if you have any sense, you look at the fact that the market's at a record high right now. Corporate profits are through the roof. Meanwhile, your average worker hasn't gotten a raise since 1980. We have over $1 trillion in credit card debt, over $1 trillion in student loan debt. We have medical bankruptcies out the wazoo. So you have stagnant wages. Over half the country makes $30,000 a year or less. Corporations and rich people are fucking thriving. Income inequality at a record high. Corporate profits at a record high. This is fake. And then the Republicans turn around and go, we need to give the rich and corporations another break. But they're already doing it. They're at record highs. The fuck are you you got to give them a break? Are you kidding me? What? But they cut taxes and deregulate in this era right now. This crash is going to be terrible. Oh my God, it's going to be so bad. The economy is a house of cards. Uh-oh. So this tax bill is a disaster. It's a disaster across the board. And buckle up, because it's going to be shitty for working people. And that economic crash is coming, and it might not be too far off in the future.